Tandem Nomads, episode 22.
I mean, that negative voice inside of us, it needs to be given a chance to speak sometimes, and to realize that you're not alone in some of these negative feelings. And sometimes just that, putting it out there and sharing it and then hearing feedback from other expats that they also experience those same feelings, sometimes that's enough to just to lift the weight off of your shoulders and to feel better.
Welcome to Tandem Nomads, where inspiring expat partners from around the world share with you how they turn the challenges of relocation into great opportunities. So are you following your partner abroad for his or her career? Then Tandem Nomads is the place for you. Go to tandemnomads.com and sign up for the newsletter. Hello, Nomad Nation. This is Emel Deragi, and attention, grumpy expats. This is a total ungrump. The beautiful voice that you just heard is the voice of our guest today, Alison Trainer. Alison, are you ready for the ride?
I am.
As you have heard, Alison is a talented soprano, a singing actress. She has been performing in various operas in the US and Switzerland. She's also a trained dancer and a certified yoga instructor. Alison comes from the US and lives in Switzerland, where she joined her husband and started a family. I invited her to join us today as she's the founder of a Facebook group called Grumpy Expat that I found absolutely fascinating and that counts over 2,000 members. Before we explain what this group is all about and discuss how grumpy we can be when we live abroad, could you please, Alison, tell us a little bit more about you and how you became an expat in Switzerland?
Sure. Well, I had been living in New York for about 10 years and singing opera professionally. And several of the companies that I was working for in America went bankrupt after 2008. And so it became harder and harder to find enough work. And I thought I would give Europe a try. And I sang a lot of auditions in Europe. And then I landed a job in Switzerland, of all places, in St. Gallen, Switzerland. And I came here by myself. I hadn't met my husband yet. And I met him about 6 months after I arrived. And so at the Theater St. Gallen, I was singing principal roles in all different kinds of operas and operettas and musicals and singing lots of concerts, and then very quickly met my husband and very quickly had 2 babies. And so it's been a bit of a whirlwind.
Wow. You went there to get a job and you found a husband and had 2 kids.
It was definitely not part of my plan, but that's how it worked out. So.
Wonderful. What a beautiful story. So tell us, how did you get to create this group? I mean, seriously.
Well, to be honest, it was actually started as kind of a joke. I complain quite a bit to my husband about Switzerland, and he's Swiss, and I have to give him a lot of credit. He's a really good sport. He hears me complaining a lot. But sometimes I really go over the top with it. I can get very angry and frustrated and nasty about, the challenges I find as an expat in Switzerland. And so one morning I was kind of joking with him, and I thought, maybe I should create a Facebook group, called Bitchy Expat, and we were just giggling over that. And then I thought, well, how about Angry Expat? And I thought, well, that sounds too angry. So we came up with Grumpy Expat, and it's really meant to be kind of tongue-in-cheek, because it's not black and white. We all have things we love about being expats, and we have things that we hate about being an expat. And, we need to have a safe space to complain without feeling like we're burdening our partners or burdening, our friends or our colleagues, or without, insulting the local people, because that can be sensitive also.
Yeah, definitely. I was very impressed. I know that, the whole point of Tandem Nomads is actually the positivity. It's how to turn challenges into opportunities. And by nature, I would have never gone to such a group like Grumpy Expat. It's just something for me, because I've been somehow very influenced by the American culture where complaining is a no-go. You never say, I can't. You never say, oh no, And I think it's a great way to raise kids to really, try to find the best in every situation, even the challenging ones. But,
Absolutely.
Yeah. But at the same time, the more I was reading the post, and the more I was like, actually, this is not just only about grumping, first of all. It's about supporting each other, you know.
Yes.
It's more than just being grumpy. It's about, okay, I feel frustrated and I have a safe space where I'm not hurting anybody, where I can just get all that negativity out, but then suddenly reflect about it and then realize that everything's fine.
Absolutely. I mean, that negative voice inside of us, it needs to be given a chance to speak sometimes. And it's also really, it helps you feel less lonely because you realize, you know, there's nothing wrong with you for feeling the way you feel. Lots of expats feel that way. And it's incredibly comforting to realize that you're not alone in some of these negative feelings. And sometimes just that alone, just putting it out there and sharing it and then hearing feedback from other expats that they also experience those same feelings. Sometimes that's enough to just to lift the weight off of your shoulders and to feel better, you know.
Definitely.
And also to see the humor in your situation and maybe to help find solutions to your situation. But without that sort of shaming sense that expats often feel they receive from locals. For example, if you complain to somebody who's Swiss, you know, if you're living in Switzerland, they might say, well, if you don't like it, just go home. Mm. And we all know that it's not that simple. It's not that black and white. Mm. You know, we may love many things about being an expat, but really struggle with a few aspects of the lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And some of us may not be able to go home, whether because our home country may be in chaos or for financial reasons or family reasons. It's not always a question of being able to just drop everything and go home. Yeah. So there needs to be a place where people can speak openly about their experiences and not feel like they're going to be shamed for it. Mm-hmm.
But some people are even grumpy about what happens back home, actually.
Absolutely.
You know, Absolutely. So it's not only about shaming the expat, the host country. I like to say the host country. Mm-hmm. It's also about, you know, saying what frustrates us in general in the world, in the situation of our world today, politics, very interesting. There's a huge diversity, but the main part of it is, I guess, I think at the end of the day, when I read all these great posts, I realize it has a lot to do also with adapting to a new culture and Absolutely. The culture shock, you know. And there is
yes, and the thing is, these are little things, but it's amazing how much small things like that can unnerve you when you're you know, trying to adapt to a new culture. You'd think it's little, but it's not little when you're, you know, adding it all up in your daily routine, and these little things can really frustrate you or confuse you. And it's good to just be able to laugh about it and keep it in perspective.
Yeah, definitely. So according to you, how grumpy can we be as an expat?
Oh, incredibly. I mean, we've actually had some challenges. It seems to have calmed down quite a bit. But we've had some challenges over the months with, you know, people trolling or people shaming each other for being negative when we know that's a big no-no in Grumpy Expat. You're not allowed to shame someone for venting their negative feelings. And we've also had some challenges when big political issues have come up. And people are very emotional and very passionate and sometimes can start to lose their sense of respect for themselves and the other people in the group. But I have to say, in general, we've always gotten back on track. Mm-hmm. And the vast majority of people involved are really wonderful people with great intentions. And it's such a diverse group. You know, it's really amazing. But everybody has their challenges. And for some people, I would say, especially for people who don't really feel in control of their lives, you know, people who are living somewhere because they feel they have to for whatever reason, those tend to be the people that faced the darkest feelings. And you know, there's a lot of depression. There's a lot of expat depression. I mean, if you just Google expat depression, you'll come up with all kinds of things. And people get very bitter and very frustrated. So I'm glad that this has been a source of support for a lot of people. That's exactly what my intention was, and I'm really, really grateful and happy to see that it's helping some people.
It's really amazing, and I like the fact that you mentioned this depression. And I think there's a lot of people who, when I've been also feeling very depressed many times in my life, and it does bring a lot of negativity. And once we get it out somehow, first of all, I feel that it's easy because we do it in a safe place where we know we're not hurting anybody.
Yes.
And if we are pushing it, there are people there who will tell you, listen, there's another way to see it.
Yes.
And this is what I loved about it. I mean, it's not black or white, everybody's bad. And it's not only about bashing, but it's also about, compensating our feelings. And and there's a real, there are a lot of very intense debates and true debates. And this is also what I like. It's very authentic in a way.
Yes. Yes.
But you have a rule of conduct, don't you?
Yes, we have quite a few rules. And actually that, I did not begin with that. I learned that rules were necessary, and by about 6 months into the process, we had a code of conduct, but that was a steep learning curve for me. Because it didn't even occur to me in the beginning. And then I quickly found out that you really have to spell things out and make things clear. Also, so that if you need to remove somebody, you have a premise, you have clear reasoning that you can explain to them.
Very good. So what are the rules?
Well, basically, I think one of the first rules is not to shame anyone and not to try to tell somebody to leave the country if they're not happy. That kind of commenting is not really welcome in the group. Another rule is, if you don't have something constructive or kind or empathetic to say, you should probably just move on from the thread, and rather than, commenting and insisting on an argument everywhere. You have to be an expat, for example. We've had some people trying to join who were not expats. We've had spouses, for example, and girlfriends and boyfriends trying to join, but you absolutely must be an expat. And then we try, one of the rules is to avoid aggressively political or religious discussions. Now, we certainly do veer in that direction sometimes. For example, the refugee crisis. It's kind of impossible for that not to be brought up in some way when you're living in the middle of Europe, and we have lots of expats living in Germany right now, and we have some expats living in Turkey. And so, of course, this is going to come up. And I don't really think there's anything wrong with people talking about it. And in fact, we've had people organizing donations and organizing projects to help the refugees through Grumpy Expat. So this can be a very good thing. But at the same time, we want to keep it from getting too heated and too personal and too angry.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I'm sure that, it's not that easy to be able to, create such a huge group. It's like more than 2,000 members. It's huge.
Yes.
So
I had no idea that would happen. It happened almost overnight.
It did?
Oh, yes. I think I started it last January, and it's funny. It was the beginning of a new year, and I had all these goals, and my kids were in the daycare, so I had a day to go through my to-do list, and I created the page. And then I meant to get on to the rest of my to-do list for the day, but one by one, I just watched people joining the group. And I think by the end of the day, it was 800 people.
Wow. How did you get to promote it? How did the people know about your group?
I didn't really. I listed it on a couple of expat pages that I know of from Switzerland. And I invited some of my local friends who I know are expats, and then it just kind of exploded. Wow. And what really thrilled me is, of course, it's a little bit Switzerland heavy because I know so many people in Switzerland, but I also really, really love that there are English-speaking expats living in Tokyo and Saudi Arabia and all over the world. And it's so interesting for us to be able to read their posts and to chat with them about what they're experiencing.
It's absolutely amazing. I'm pretty sure that this group now must be attracting some people who want to do business now and with expats. So how are you making sure that doesn't happen?
Well, I'm not making sure it doesn't happen, but actually, in the beginning, when it took off so quickly, several people approached me and said, "Hey, this could be a big moneymaker. There's all kinds of things you could do with this." And that was never really my intent. I did not want this to be anything involving money, and I'm very careful about the advertising that I allow on the page. I really only want people to advertise something if it's something that they're offering personally that they believe would benefit expats. And that's why I have everybody approve anything they're posting regarding advertising. They have to check it out with me first. And then about once a month, I'll have a free advertising day where everybody can advertise their goods and services on that day to, what they have to offer other expats. Because, of course, I want to support people's interests and people's own personal businesses as expats. But I don't want it to turn into a page that's full of advertisements. And also for me, it's very important that this be 100% nonprofit as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's really great that you still resist and you're not tempted. You could have been.
No, I'm really not. I'm not tempted at all. There are plenty of other ways to make money in the world, and I really just want this group to be about people making connections.
Wonderful. That's great. And so tell me more about now your experience. What was so frustrating for you when you moved that pushed you to create a place to be able to be grumpy?
Well, to be honest, before I had children, I really wasn't grumpy. I came here for an amazing job. I had been traveling around the world as an opera singer as a freelancer, which is very exciting, but also very stressful. You're constantly in different places and you are constantly in between jobs. And so when I came to Switzerland, I had a fixed job in an opera house where I got to debut all kinds of dream roles that I'd always wanted to sing. And I got to sleep in the same bed every night. So I didn't really have much to complain about. Plus, my best friend was also a singer at the house. And then I met this sweet, wonderful man, and he took me all over Switzerland, and we went hiking in the mountains. And it never occurred to me that I might stay in Switzerland. That literally didn't occur to me. And it was only later when the prospect of staying appeared that I then began to feel really stuck and really frustrated. And, nothing makes you feel more nostalgic than having a baby, because you miss your family, you miss your friends, you miss the comforts and the conveniences of home. When I gave birth, I gave birth alone. I moved to my husband's suburb of Zurich, and I didn't know anybody there. And I had a very difficult birth, followed by some really tough postpartum depression. The family of my husband did not help me at all. I mean, literally, they would come to my house and sit on the couch and tell me how skinny my baby was and not even pour me a cup of tea. It was appalling, frankly. And the only people that really did anything were a couple of expats that I had been writing to on this group called Switzerland's English Moms and Moms-to-Be. And I had, one wonderful woman brought me over all different kinds of bottles that I could try and soup. And then another woman literally brought me a freezer full of homemade food for my family. And that, that's the kind of kindness that you miss from American culture, where people will show up at your door and say, you take a nap, I'll hold the baby, Yeah. And so it was just so profoundly lonely to go through this experience in a suburb where I couldn't even walk down the street and get a cup of coffee. It was so isolated, and people were not helpful at all. And so that kind of began my frustrations with Switzerland. And also I just missed so much from home. When you have children, you start thinking about what you want for your children, how you want your children to feel, what opportunities you want your children to have. And I had a pretty incredible childhood. I mean, I grew up in San Diego, California. Everybody had a pool in their backyard. Everybody walked to school together. It was a very casual lifestyle. And, I had all kinds of crazy extracurricular activities, dance and music and gymnastics and diving and skiing. And I mean, it was everything. It was wonderful. And you start wondering, is my child going to be able to have all those things here? And you start wondering about diversity, for example. I really want my children to be exposed to racial and religious and cultural diversity. And so I started worrying, is Eastern Switzerland too homogenous and too conservative? And that kind of began my challenges with Switzerland. The truth is, it's a phenomenal country with so many beautiful things. And now I'm afraid I'm in that kind of middle place where most expats find themselves, which is that they love certain things about their expat country and they love certain things about their home country, and they're literally writing lists of pros and cons, trying to figure out, which is where they should live as a family. And I'm really struggling with it because my heart is absolutely in the United States, no question. But there are many things about Switzerland that are so amazing.
What do you love about it?
Well, depending upon where you live, but I live right in the heart of Zurich, and I love the trams and the buses. They're perfect. They're flawless, clean, on time. I mean, it's really remarkable. And I love the cleanliness. I love the reliability of things. I love the yogurt. I was making a list the other day of things that I would miss, and it's a very small list, but it includes yogurt and the Starbucks cafe creme, because they don't make coffee like that in America.
No.
And the coffee here is incredible.
It is. Yeah.
So, and of course, there are people that I would miss. There are many people that I've gotten to know since being here that I would miss if I left.
Did you manage to start having like Swiss friends?
Actually, I had breakfast with a Swiss friend this morning. It's tough. It's really, really tough. I can count on just a couple fingers my Swiss friends, and it is different with them. I mean, for example, the friend that I had breakfast with this morning, I've known her for 3 years, and she's come to my house many times, and she's never once invited me to her house. And I actually pointed this out to her this morning. I said, I want you to know that, because we're good enough, I like her enough, and we're friendly enough that I can say things like that to her. I said, I want you to know that, you've never once invited me to your home. And she was kind of horrified.
It's interesting, huh?
It is interesting because she didn't really realize that she had never invited me into her home. And so we got talking about it, and she said, you're absolutely right. I think it's almost like I have this Swiss realm and this home realm that is utterly and completely Swiss. And then I have my theater realm with my theater friends, and they are from all over the world. And because you're part of that realm, it's not that I purposefully exclude you from my Swiss realm. It's just that it literally never occurred to me. So, if you're making Swiss friends, it's definitely a challenge. They do not let you in as quickly.
It takes time, but I think from my experience because I lived in Lyon, and it's very similar.
Okay. Yes.
It's in the border. And I think what I've learned is that they take a lot of time to give you their trust. It's just part of the culture. But then once they give it to you, it's for life.
Right.
Right. It's like there is nothing that can break you. It's like for life. And
I haven't gotten that far. I haven't experienced a friendship with a Swiss person that's, other than my husband, obviously, that's that close. But I have to say, my husband continues to surprise me, because in some ways he's a very typical Swiss man. And then in other ways he's completely not. He's got to be one of the most laid back, flexible people I know. And that's totally un-Swiss.
So what does he think about your opinion? What you've been explaining about what's been challenging for you in the Swiss culture? Well, how does he perceive it?
I think in the beginning it was a little bit surprising for him, because he just, he's never known anything else really. So, he doesn't really know what the alternatives are. He did study in America for a year. He studied outside of San Francisco for a year, and he absolutely loved it. And I'm really glad he did, because I think that's part of why he was more open to, to getting to know me. And when I take him back to the States, he definitely does sense a big difference in how warm and friendly and open people are just upon first meeting, random strangers in the street that will really genuinely open themselves to you. Yeah. So I think he understands where I'm coming from, and he also enjoys it when he's there. He enjoys how welcoming my friends are to him, and how they absolutely bring him into the fold without question. So I think more and more he understands, and he sees me struggle with things, and he when it's hard for me, I think it's hard for him too. I think it makes him sad. On the other hand, he's never really lived anywhere else long term. So for him, he just has his good memories of his Swiss childhood. So it's hard for him to understand why I would worry about anything in Switzerland.
It is a little paradise there,
It is in some ways, but it's also kind of a little bit Disneyland. Like, it's almost too perfect in some ways. You want to see something edgy or rough or wild or, inspired or passionate. And that's tough to find.
Funny that you say that. Because my husband is Austrian, and Austria and Switzerland are very similar countries.
Yes.
I love Austria.
Yes.
But I remember he was so proud taking me through the villages and taking me through these perfectly beautiful houses where the wood is parallel and the grass is so nicely cut. And it was and after 1 hour driving, I was like, oh my God, it's just so annoyingly beautiful. It's too perfect. I guess this is the charm of our world, is this diversity of what you can find and the type of beauties. And it's very interesting to see how when we travel the world, we perceive things differently.
Absolutely.
And our references, I think it's almost confusing somehow for me right now, I don't know about you, to at the end of the day know what I really like. Yes. Because I've learned to adapt and to appreciate everything I go into. Yes. And now it's difficult for me to know, what do I want? Do I want a neat country or do I want a messy country? I always say, we can't have excitement and order at the same time.
That's right.
If you want excitement, then go to a messy place. If you want order and very good quality of life with no burdens, then go to a place that it's extremely ordered. So, so it's hard to choose.
And I find myself I am trying to project into the future what my children would want or what my children will feel more comfortable with based on their personality. I tend to think that expats who are very introverted are more comfortable in Switzerland. But people who are very extroverted are not as comfortable because they need feedback from those around them. So when, I'm so extroverted, obviously, and when I'm out and about in Switzerland, it bothers me that people don't connect, whether it's on the subway or in the store. Everybody has their kind of personal distance and they have walls up, and it's hard to connect with people, and that's very hard for me as an extrovert. But if you're an introvert, you probably actually really appreciate that. And perhaps if you are super introverted and you live in New York, it might drive you insane that everybody's always talking to you.
So true. Very interesting. So are you planning now? What's your plans now? Are you planning to stay there? You obviously do have a nice life in Switzerland despite the cultural differences.
Yes.
Is it a place where you want to stay, or are you planning now to take your husband and get him to experience something else?
Yes. Honestly, I wish I knew clearly what I wanted. I've always known what I've wanted my entire life, and that's driven me. And for the first time in my adult life, at age 41, I am sitting here thinking, gosh, I'm not entirely sure what I want. Because if I was 100% sure that we belonged back in America, then I would make that happen. But I'm not 100% sure. And on any given day, I waver wildly back and forth. And also, a lot of it has to do with career for me. So I'm no longer in a fixed position in St. Gallen, and I want to go back to being a freelancer. But as a freelancer, you can pretty much live anywhere.
Definitely, yeah.
And then also, in addition to being a freelancer, I just finished my doctorate, and I would like to start looking for professorships that allow me to still travel and sing.
Doctorate in what?
In music, in vocal performance.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. So I love teaching. I absolutely adore teaching singing. I also teach yoga, and I love to integrate the two. And so I'm opening myself up to professorship teaching jobs both here in Switzerland and in the United States. And we'll see what comes up and I guess take it as it comes. As you know, the United States is enormous. So it's not even a question of, do I move back to the United States? I might be moving, if I get a job, I might be in Kentucky. I might be in Washington State. I mean, it could be anywhere. So that's sort of another issue, because I can tell you as a coastal person, if you travel to the Midwest or the South, you also feel like an expat.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there will be some culture shocks you will experience, I'm sure, once you're back.
For sure.
Yeah. So you're still singing, right?
Oh yes, I'm always singing.
Where can we hear you? Do you have any shows coming up?
I have some concerts coming up in the United States, in New York, and And then that's about it right now, because I sort of abruptly stopped my fixed job in St. Gallen. And when I was there, I was absolutely owned by the theater. So I wasn't able to audition. I wasn't able to travel very much. And then I had my 2 babies. So I've had a little bit of a break now, and then I'm going to be diving back into concert work and operas and teaching, hopefully.
Okay, great. So before we say goodbye, Alison, is there one advice you could share with our friends and Nomad Nation on, how to try to make, despite having a space to be grumpy, and that's great. Besides, what's the next step? What would you recommend to expats to make the best out of their experience abroad?
Well, I think that surrounding yourself with people you genuinely like is probably the most important thing. When you show up in a new place, you usually reach out to expats pretty much immediately, and that's a great thing to do. There's always all kinds of expat organizations. But I think it's also important to remember that expats are a cross-section of the general population. And that's just because somebody's an expat doesn't mean you're going to really connect with them on a deep level. And I think it's worth really taking the time to get to know as many expats as you can, and sifting through and finding people that you really feel a genuine connection to. Mm-hmm. And those people will be, your support team in a way. Mm-hmm. And your new family.
They have been your family when you gave birth, actually.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you see that happening so much in these online groups, these Facebook groups and meetup groups, where people really step up and help each other in ways that maybe their neighbors won't, or their family won't. So that, I think, is also really important.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? Because we have this debate. I mean, since I've been all my life an expat, and the debate has been always present in my life, how much effort you have to put in not only sticking to expats, but also meeting with locals and mingling and not staying in this bubble. What do you think?
In the bubble. I think it's really tricky. When I first got here, my bubble was the theater, those theater people. And theater people are totally international, and I met lots of Swiss people, but only in the audience, basically. And then when I started thinking about raising my children here, I thought, it doesn't seem really like a good idea to remain in just a bubble. If we're going to stay here, I want my children to feel really comfortable and integrated and connected. And that means that I need to make the effort too, to really reach out to, Swiss people and get to know and make more Swiss friends. But to be honest, I found that really challenging. And so this is an issue that I kind of go back and forth on. On the one hand, I don't feel great about living my life in a bubble. On the other hand, I find that Swiss culture is particularly difficult to break into, given this really difficult Swiss-German dialect and the culture. Mm-hmm. So I think for me, what I'm having to do is kind of have a mix of approaches. I'm letting myself off the hook for spending lots of time with expats and investing a lot in my expat friendships. That's what I'm doing, because that fills my soul and makes me happy. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I'm also sort of step by step making sure that I'm open to, having Swiss friends and making connections with Swiss people along my way. For example, when if you have children, it's a little easier because you bring your children to daycare or to school, and there you have an opportunity to get to know some more local parents. And so I've tried to reach out and have a couple play dates, and it's not easy, especially with my, sort of intermediate only German. But I think it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you. That was great. Before we say goodbye, I would like us to both say a big greetings to our friends in Grumpy Expat.
Absolutely. I'm very grateful for this community. It's a wonderful community of supportive people, and I'm really, really glad that people keep coming together to support each other. It surpassed my expectations.
Wonderful. How can Nomad Nation find you?
Well, you can find me if you look for Grumpy Expat on Facebook, you can look at that group. And then also my email is alisontrainer@gmail.com, and that's ALISONTRAINER. And my website is www.alisontrainer.com. www.alisontrainer.com.
So Nomad Nation, do not hesitate. Join us in Grumpy Expat on Facebook. And if you're interested in Alison's great talent in singing, please go to her website or contact her if you need her. Alison, again, many, many thanks. This was so much fun to do this with you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Nomad Nation, don't miss any of the great inspiration, tips, and insights that will prepare just for you. Go to tandemnomads.com and sign up for the newsletter.